Let's talk about vertebrae. We're going to talk about this typical structure of a vertebra. So all vertebrae, regardless of their position in the vertebral column, they have specific structural components in common. So the first one is this big structure right here, the thick disc-shaped anterior portion. This is the body. It's the weight-bearing region. Between adjacent vertebrae will be those intervertebral discs, which I cover in a different video. Then there's other sections of bone that make up the vertebral arch. So this vertebral arch encloses the spinal cord traveling through it. So the first branches of bone, which you can't see here because they're covered by spinal nerves leaving, those would be the pedicles. So there would be a pedicle over here and a pedicle over here. The other two bony components that make up the vertebral arch are the laminae, and this is this section and this section. So two pedicles, two laminae. There's some processes that stick off of the vertebral arch. So the first process is the transverse process. It's sticking out to the side. There's one on each side, over here and over here, the transverse processes. Projecting posteriorly is the spinous process, and that's a site for muscle and ligament attachment. What you'll also see on any typical vertebrae is the vertebral foramen. That's the hole that's created by the vertebral arch. And if you have multiple vertebrae stacked together, that vertebral foramen is described as the vertebral canal. This vertebra that I'm holding up right here is a cervical vertebra. I know it's cervical because it has an additional hole here, an additional hole here in the transverse processes. So these are the transverse foramina. And additionally, it has this bifid or forked spinous process, letting me know that I'm looking at a cervical vertebra. Another feature that I forgot to mention that you'll see are the superior. This would be a superior articulating facet on either side, and underneath that would be the inferior articulating facets. And that's where the vertebrae articulate with the vertebrae above and below them. So there are 3 points of contact between any two adjacent vertebrae. That would be at the body with the intervertebral disc, and then at the articulating processes on either side. So this one's a cervical vertebra. You'll recall that the thoracic vertebrae are those that look like a giraffe when they're viewed from the side. This is because they have that inferiorly pointing spinous process. They also have articulating sites for ribs. So they have a rib articulating facet on the body of the vertebra, and then a costal transverse facet on the transverse process. And check out other videos online if you want to see other illustrations of those. If you look at one that looks sort of like a moose from the side, then you're looking at lumbar vertebrae. These are the largest ones that are supporting the weight of the body, so they have posteriorly pointing spinous processes. One thing that can be illustrated with these two vertebrae articulating together is the vertebral canal that's extending between the vertebral foramen of two adjacent vertebrae. And you can also see where this illustrated in yellow spinal nerve is sticking out. That would be the intervertebral foramen. So the intervertebral foramen is only produced when two vertebrae are stacked together. So this opening right here that spinal nerve is traveling through, that would be the intervertebral foramen. You'll need to know additionally how to identify two special vertebrae. That's C1, that's the atlas, which has no body and articulates with the occipital bone, and C2, the axis, which has that dens or odontoid process. So it's absorbed the body of C1, the atlas, and atlas rotates around it to allow you to rotate your head, and the atlas also articulates with the occipital bone to allow you to nod your head yes